This is Mile High.
Do I want to tell the story or do I want to show the message?
You've got a lot of work to do between Mile High.
The time has come where we can know
we have a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right,
it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
it's now time for the show.
Welcome to the Mile High podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles, coming from Mile High Altitude, and I'm so thrilled to have the guest today. He's coming from Italy, which I'm a little bit jealous. It's a different altitude, but it's pretty darn awesome having visited there often. If you are watching, listening, whatever channel you're listening on, hit subscribe so you never miss any Mile High tick. And also make sure you hit register for Mile High 12. I can't believe it. Mile High 12. I think Joe was at the first one, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think I was at the,
dressed as Elvis. So Dr. Joe Borio is one of my good friends and one of the people I look up to in chiropractic. Practice he was born in 1965 in Syracuse, New York, and family had a large Italian restaurant. It's probably why he's in Italy, and practiced in Cicero, New York, since 91. He was on the Sherman College of Board of Trustees with me, where we helped pull that school out of the ashes. And he's been doing chiropassion consulting. You're going to learn a lot on this with him, because anytime you can get to listen to Joe Borio, you want to be there. So, Dr. Joe, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Honored to be part of it. I always share the story about you, Danny, but I remember being on the board and I didn't really know anyone. Liam Schubel had asked me, I think, or initiated some of that to try to change some of the culture on the board. And I'd met you, and I remember us going out to a Chinese or Thai restaurant, and you are who you are, and that's a wonderful, genuine, very authentic, kind person. And that meant a lot to me, because like I said, I didn't know anybody out there, and it was just, it was great to kind of immediately make a friend, and we've been friends ever since. So I thank you for that.
I was afraid that you were going to say something else. I was thinking about that this morning, and I was swerving around the road, and you were commenting about that. I thought you were going to talk about that. So
no, the second day we were there, I don't know if you remember, but there's a picture of us, and we took Krispy Kreme.
Oh yeah, well
that was day two. Hey Joe, the lights on. I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, the lights on. We got to do this. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah. So, well, now people know a little bit Thai food and Krispy Kreme. So, So, first of all, some people may not know you as well as I. So,
sure. Tell
people a little bit about you and your journey into the chiropractic world, so people get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, that's great question, and to me, it's a great story. I was born with some health problems, and I was forceps birth. I was a real heavy baby, got hung up in mom's birth canal, and they had used forceps on me for really essentially 30 minutes. So you can even see, with the eyebrow, and one side of my face still drops a little bit. And I had all kinds of sensory integration, I don't know what they really referred to it back then. And was lacking of thriving. I had, I remember putting things in my mouth. I had a lot of textural issues, sounds. I heard all the time. I remember kind of hurting all the time, sick a lot. And my parents, like any, parent, your kid's got these problems. You're doctor shopping for a few years, and really wasn't finding any success. So they brought me to a guy, in fact, Bill Thaser, Dr. Bill Thaser on Chestnut Street in North Syracuse, New York. And he asked my mom, I remember my mother got emotional. He asked my mom, he said, tell me about your son's birth. And my mother said, my God, I've been asking the doctors about this, all the experts, he was almost 12 pounds. He got hung up at the birth canal. They pulled him, and I think something, happened, and it damaged or caused him to be so sick. And so they did some pictures, and upper cervical, 1, 2, and essentially 3. And I still tend to shift a little bit. I'm way better than I was when I was a kid. I had basically wry neck, torticollis, the whole thing. And this guy started adjusting me 3 times a week for almost 6 months. And I mean, it literally changed my life. I was having seizures and all kinds of other health problems, and that cleared up. And my mother said, "My God, if it's that good for Joey, imagine how good it would be for the family." So we all went to the chiropractor once a month, and my dad's Pontiac Bonneville, which he had for about 20 years, had the seat that faced the other way. So if you got rear-ended, all the kids had, no seat belts back then, So, yeah, so it literally was a part of my life, and I was very blessed because at the time you're not thinking it's a miracle story for me, it was a miracle to my parents, but I think it was a very normal thing to do. It was, you went to your family doctor, you went to your dentist, you went, to the grocery, you went and did things with your friends, and it was just very normal. There was never abnormality to it. It wasn't unique, and it wasn't really until I was later in high school where you're talking to your friends and you're like, oh, I go see Dr. Thaser, and they're like, what's he doing? Chiropractor. Most people didn't even know what that was, and sometimes you'd hear a comment and you'd be like, what? Like, I didn't even understood it. I didn't know I liked this kind of doctor and I didn't. Like, I didn't get any of that. So I was very blessed from that standpoint. And my parents ran a big restaurant. They wanted my brother, Tony, Joe and Tony, there's a shocker, to take over. And you say Joe or Tony at the dinner table in our house, everybody stands up. You can say
Right.
So I said to my parents, I don't want to take over the restaurant, and they were like, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a chiropractor. I want to do what Dr. Thaser did. My parents were kind of heartbroken, but they got it. So I went into chiropractic school, and I went to national, and the negative there, good people, obviously, and got a great education, science, but it was very medical, very therapeutic. And I really came out less of a chiropractor than when I went in. And I really struggled in practice. I was really excited to open. I rented a place, and which I'm still there now. And I really struggled. I mean, I was seeing Elizabeth Boyke Bob Adams was my first practice member, worked for Bell Telephone, had a lower back problem, and Elizabeth Boyke came in. She had leg trouble, and I remember them, and I had all the therapies and all the different things, the gizmos in my office, and I just was not doing well after a couple of years. My parents were funding not only my education, but now my practice. And my dad had a great conversation. He said, hey, Joe, listen, there's got to be guys that are doing really well. Why don't you talk to one, or your mother and I will help you out. We'll pay to help you teach you how to run this kind of business, And my dad was just a real sharp guy. And I said, yeah, okay. So that was frowned upon in national. Reggie, who ended up being my coach, wasn't even allowed to, again, I didn't understand that. I remember doing Irene Gold, but why wouldn't they let Reggie? Like, I didn't, again, I didn't really comprehend what was going on. And then I heard a guy named Brian Coslow, management, and that was really my journey. I worked with him for about 3 years. He was great. His wife was a chiropractor. He was an MBA, and I was brought into coaching and mentoring. And man, I'll tell you what, it literally changed my life. I didn't know what I didn't know. I had a lot of energy, a lot of passion. I wanted to make a difference in the world. I didn't have an ego where I thought I was better than other people, but I had the ego where I wanted to do it myself, and that hurt me bad. That really hurt me. It held me back. And so when I released myself to that, I was very coachable at that point, and Brian taught me a lot, and then he brought in speakers, and Reggie was one of the speakers. And, I tell that story quickly, but I remember having a flip chart. And he said, hey, 100 hot low backs come in your office, 99 get better, 1 doesn't. When you drive home, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about the 1 because you're thinking therapeutic. You're thinking you're doing the healing. You're thinking you're doing the work. You think what you do is doing the correction, when in reality, it's the body that's healing. And, he started talking like Thaser, all of a sudden those neurons in my brain, they started to perk back up, like hearing a language you haven't heard in a while. And you're like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that. I lost that. And really I ended up being a Reggie groupie. I went to Sherman and followed him around to Pennsylvania, Toronto. I would have still coached with him, but he told me he was retired and he wasn't going to coach me anymore. And I still called him. So, but I worked with Jim Sigafus. I hired Jim Sigafus, and I worked with him for, I want to say 3 or 4 years. At the same time, I worked with waiting practice. He was fantastic. Coach CJ, I thought he was great. Learned a lot of procedures and protocols from those guys. Ben and Greg Lerner, they did Body by God. They were phenomenal. Bob Schiffman, and so many other people. Fred Schofield. I don't want to forget Fred. He was fantastic. And everyone brought a different element. Fred brought energy, but not a lot of detail of protocol procedure. CJ was like protocol procedure nonstop, which was great. And then a lot of guys were visionary, and Reggie was really big on, the overall idea, the concept, not just the philosophy and not really protocol, but here's what you're doing when you walk into the room. Here's your intention. And Jim was, obviously all philosophy, metaphysics, your manifestation and such. And really, I became a product of them, Fred Barge and Sid Williams, and some of the greatest that walked the planet. And I went from really struggling to practice and not being able to pay my bills, and we ended up seeing more people in a week than and I tell some people that they get kind of freaky because they think as a coach I'm trying to get them to see that. But I mean, I have it on Facebook. I saw 687 people in one day by myself, with 3 staff at the front. We had a retention of about 400. We had hired 2 guys, Dave Pendergast and Ron Stratton, who were both practice members of mine. They directed traffic out in front of my office so we could get people in and out. So for about 3 years, we were averaging well over 600 people in a day. And it was phenomenal. So, like people ask me, like, how do you go from there? It wasn't a day. It wasn't a leap. It was a kind of a steady progression of resets. And, but I think once I started to realize, when I studied the greats, Reggie did things different than Ernie Landy. Ernie Landy did things a little different than Ian Grossman. Joe D'Onofrio did things a little different than Reggie, right? But one of the things I realized is if you went into Jim Sigafus's office, you got processed and everyone got processed with their protocols and procedures exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So even though everyone did things maybe a little different, they did exactly the same thing every time somebody walked in as a new one, like protocol day 1, their protocol day 2, their protocol day 3, whatever. And I really started to understand, like, there has to be, like Ray Kroc from McDonald's, there has to be consistency, there has to be commitment, there has to be romance, there has to be these components of growing a practice. That was a big part of it. And then the other part of it was, like Reggie taught me, what are you trying to accomplish when you walk into the room, and are you trying to get their back pain gone, or are you trying to get their body to heal so that it can handle the back pain? Like that's an enormous difference. Am I doing the healing, or is the body doing the healing and I'm allowing the body to heal better? So I started to get that concept down, which changed my community. The better I could communicate, more concise I could communicate, the more effective I could be. And then, as all those things came together over the years, boy, the practice, I mean, just did crazy stuff, crazy things. Like you almost can't even explain it. And it was easy in the sense, so some people may look at that and go, you're nuts, but it was easy because when you came in, Dan, with Rochelle, yep, and you and your wife walked in, like you walked in, you grabbed a paper. We have our numbers, room numbers. We had 4 adjusting rooms. So it has room number 1, 2, 3, or 4. You grab it. You're like, oh, I'm going to room 1. You go to room 1, you lay down. I walk in, you're already laying down. So I'm not chit-chatting with you. And you already know what I'm doing, and I adjust you, and you get up, and I'm like, man, straighter's healthier, body's breathing better. Danny, great adjustment. I'll see you next week. Like that, you weren't like, oh my God, Dr. G, you weren't sitting up going, Doc,
right,
before you touch, right, I got to go through 20, symptoms. So because they were educated and they were much clearer, not 100% on what we were doing and what our intention was, then it really became easy to see a lot of people, because people were just coming in, getting adjusted and leaving. It wasn't like, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about this. And and it just became this beautiful, it just became a beautiful place that, you know, when I think back in my life, I just know those few years, kind of like an athlete, you know, I'm sure, you know, Tiger or, you know, Michael, Douglas or an actor or whatever, like people, when they look at their life and they go, wow, that was a couple of years when I was doing movies, or those couple of years when I was on the field, like it was just, everything just went perfect and clicked. And it was was my favorite time. Even when I think back now, it was just a beautiful,
It's magic when you have those months or years that you're like just at a peak. So,
Yeah.
so it sounds like, so, you know, I'm really grateful to get like a big picture of that. And it sounds like for the people that are listening, whether it be doctors or students, if you were to choose reinventing the wheel or having someone assist you to create systems and all of that, and get your mindset right, it sounds like you would not be a fan of reinventing the wheel.
Yes, there's a lot of wasted time out there. I was one of those guys that wasted time. So yeah.
Yeah, I was too. And I probably could use mentoring again to get to another peak. I think people need guides of what to direction for people that have already done a map, you know, and they don't have to recreate a map. Like there's territory that maybe others have navigated. You know, if you had to do Mount Everest without, you know, and there's people that have done it before, if you had to just say, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, figure it out on myself, that would probably not be safe. You know, there'd probably be, you know, your life, people in the family, your family that are along for this ride that would be impacted. And there'd probably be people in your community that would be impacted and they would not get the care they could because, you know, you weren't doing that. So, you know, with that, you know, when you think of the future of chiropractic, and you think, well, students are that future, you know, what would you say for students would get them going in a good direction? And we're all students, but I'm thinking like first year students, you know, like, and they're, what would be some things that they need to be aware of?
Yeah, I think you don't know what you don't know, first off, you know, so I got out of school and I think I know, you know, my dad used to have a great line. He said, to know and not to do is not to know. You know, I snuck out of the house and I got caught and I was getting yelled at. And he said, you know, you're not supposed to get out of the house. I go, yeah. And he goes, no, you don't. Because to know and not to do is not to know. So you may have heard it, but you're not practicing it. You don't own it if you're not doing it. So I do realize that, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And I think what makes us chiropractors as a good thing makes us bad at or weaker at hiring coaches or following that, because, you know, protocols, because we're kind of freer spirits. You got to go against the grain, maybe not as much today as you did years ago, but you got to go against grain to be a chiropractor. But then when you get in, you're like, well, I'm going to do my version of chiropractic. And, you know, there isn't your version of chiropractic. Be you. Don't be Joe Borio. Like, don't try to be Joe Borio. I tell my docs all day long, don't be me. Be you. Use what I do. Own it. Make it authentically you. Learn the protocols. Learn the procedures. I have people say, I don't like scripts. You're already scripted. Anyone that says they don't like scripts, record yourself for a day. I guarantee you say the same freaking thing all the time. So you're already scripted. So the bottom line is, if you could learn some different ways to communicate and different things to say and things not to say that are going to be more efficient. You know, we try to make it so complicated. I would tell you, if you're a student, I would tell you to read. We're doing it right now in the practice. My practice right now, we are literally reading chiropractic textbooks. Steve, a chapter today. And then I would tell you to get Fred Barge, Life Without Fear. I would tell you to get Giant versus Pygmy. I would tell you to read Bigness of the Fellow Within. And those are great books that are chiropractically grounded. I think they'll give you some really good insight. And then get out of that, like read some Napoleon Hill, you know, Law of Success, which I think is phenomenal. One of my favorite books of him, or Outwitting the Devil, or, you know, other books to kind of get you. And then, like you and you. Why would you try? You didn't figure out calculus on your own. You didn't learn how to be a chiropractor on your own. Why would you think that just because you have a degree, you can get out and run an office and know computer and protocol, procedures, paperwork, phone systems, computer systems, how to manage practice members? Like why would you think you would know how to do that? Why would you try to figure it out on your own? So that's what I'd say.
Truly, truly. So now, rituals. Are there rituals that you recommend for the practicing DC?
Yes. So So my attitude is the mind is where you adjust first, right? So, going to deep principle, your transmutation, you take infinite and you're bringing it into the finite, and then you're putting that into action, right? You got life force and intelligence. So those things are happening in an adjustment. So my attitude is when I go to the office, I always get to the office an hour before anyone's there. Wow. I get all my paperwork out of the way, which is about 25 minutes. And then I spend 15 minutes directly related to getting my mind in the right place. I read one science article. I read one philosophical whatever that I love. Maybe it's the same thing for a month or two because it really heightens me, like 1990 neuropathophysiology, neuronal compression, and it talks about like a necrosis in a nerve root in a matter of like weeks. So what do you think's happening to the neurofibrils of an infant when they're coming through a traumatic birth, right? So knowing that vitamin study, 6 to 8 weeks, osteomembranous periarticular ligaments and joints tend to start degenerative changes within 6 to 8 weeks, which are moderate. So I want to know that. So when I walk in, I'm not going to quote that study to somebody, but when I look at you in the eye, Napoleon Hill said, if you want to influence people, you got to sell it to yourself. So when I'm looking at you and I'm like, hey, listen, Danny, I'm concerned. You remember the concerns on your film? You remember what's going on in those nerves? Remember what's happening in those joints? Remember what's happening here? How long do you think that's been there? How long do you think that's going to take to get better? Like, when I ask questions and I get into this dialogue with people, it's very, it's not overly serious, but there's a level of clarity and certainty that the average person goes, wow, this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. Excuse me. He knows what the hell he's talking about. And you know what? I trust in that. Right. Because he knows what he's, at least he feels as though, and then you're going to lead people. And then when I say, geez, let me ask you, Danny, one of the major causes of subluxation is birth. Were you checked when you were a kid? And you're going to say no. And then I'm going to say, and you have 2 children in their home. Have they been checked? And you're going to say no. That I got to tell you, that concerns me. That's a conversation I want to have with you because it concerns me that some of what we're seeing in you now might be genetic or familial, and that's going to be passed on to the children. We don't want them to have those same health problems. Let's talk about getting them in. So, again, it allows you to have that conversation from a level of confidence and clarity and grounded and authenticity, and that's going to influence people, and that's going to drive them into your practice. So.
And, these are things that some of us have been there a long time doing it, like take for granted because we just do them and made them habits.
Yes.
And there's so many of those things that people coming out of school or even their first, 5-10 years of practice aren't even real, don't even think of that. So, with you now, when people want to really go all in and get their practice to the next level, could you say a handful of these are the most important things? 2 things, 5 things, whatever you think. Like if you're not doing this, you got to start now, or or maybe you're not focused on it, you got to refocus.
Yeah. So like anything, like if I'm doing nutrition, exercise, right? I mean, I have to put that in me. I have to do that in order to get the benefit of it. So one of the things I would, again, repeating myself, I would read over, like one of the things we do in our program, I do a science video, 7 minutes long every week. I pick a science video that fully substantiates, correlates, relates itself to exactly what we do. Subluxation related to infertility, subluxation related to neuroplasticity, prefrontal cortex, how do you have it, whatever. So we're studying that. And then we're doing a philosophy video, which is 6 to 7 minutes. And then we're doing a training video, which is 6 to 7 minutes. So what I would tell you is read some science over every single day, including Sunday. Yes. I would read over, it's a page. Don't embarrass yourself. And then I would tell you to read over some training, come up with some protocols and procedures, without any hesitation. And then you have to be really clear on what your attention is, understanding when you walk in a room, am I trying to be the healer or am I removing giant versus pygmy, right? Am I removing the interference to allow the body to heal? And then I have to practice on communication. I have to surround myself with people who are, I got a little gray in my hair, and I know you do too, Danny. We earn that shit, so somebody who's been at it a little while.
Do I? No.
Yeah, a little. I said a little. So I want to make sure that I'm surrounding myself with people that communicate. And listen, I don't mean to sound self-serving. I have never not had a coach. I mean, I've had a coach other than my first 2 years. I've always had a coach. I've always had a mentor. I've always been involved in a group, and I would surround myself. We run a great program. It's phenomenal. I know you do too. I'm really good friends with Fred DiDomenico. He runs Elite Coaching. I'm not competing with anyone else out there. Whoever resonates with you, you hang your hat with them, and then you train with them and get better with them and work with them. And boy, if you culminate those things, how can you not be successful? How can you not be busier? So
it's just briefly, I want to ask you a couple of questions, but since you brought up Chiropractic Consulting, how do people dial in more? Is there an event coming up this year or anything like that? Or
we actually have an event in Italy. It's July. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. July 17th to 18th to 19th. We're actually here. I have a home here, so we actually have some of the event here. Our next event after that will be in November in Fort Lauderdale. That's November 8th and 9th. It's a 2-day event. We do a boot camp that's usually in March, and that's a 1-day intensive. Some of these things are recorded. You can purchase them on the website if you have interest in it. And you can reach out to me on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. I got a bunch of free stuff on there. A lot of people love free stuff, especially chiropractors. So jump on there and listen to a few things on that. But I think I guess a couple of things. I know we're coming near an end, but I think that we got to make it real simple. Straighter is better than crooked. Using words in communication that people understand. Like, there's no health in crooked. You can't stretch your spine straight. You can't drug it straight. You can't inject your spine to make it straight. You can't do that with your teeth either. If your teeth are crooked, you don't go to a pediatrician to take Tylenol and antibiotics. You go to an orthodontist. So your spine's crooked or stuck. There's only one healthcare professional that even understands it, the consequences of it, and then reduces it or corrects it. And that's a chiropractor, So there's never been a better time to be a chiropractor. I look at, you could go online right now and do a video and do a ring dinger, right? Not that I'm always thrilled with some of those videos, but I get it. But I can do a ring dinger. You put my hand on somebody to do upper cervical. I can do a beautiful and I can say, wow, your stomach's working better and your organs working better, your brain's working better, and no one's going to arrest me. You know what I mean? Like, those guys back then, they had to go to jail for that stuff. And we could just go on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and go, here's what I did, and this is how awesome it is. How unbelievable that we could share the message to the 6 billion plus people on the planet. And, we got to get our message straight, and we got to be able to communicate simple. And I think if you couple that with a passion, as well as an intention, a purpose, and a why, and a mission, man, hit your cart to somebody that knows what they're doing and wants to, want to kind of have that life, man, I'll tell you what, it's a great time to be a chiropractor.
Yeah, truly. So, with that, other than, we talked about mentors, we talked about rituals and how to philosophical grasp,
Sure.
We've been involved with politics, you and we've been involved with education. I will say at times very frequently, I'm very concerned about the future of chiropractic, right?
Yes.
What are some things you would recommend, like every doc who cares about, the philosophical, the future of chiropractic politically, that they need to do, they need to be involved with, they need to step up and, be part of the solution? What are some things that you would tell them they got to be doing?
Well, I remember Liam Schubel was speaking at an IFCO conference a number of years ago, and he's so great as a speaker anyways, and getting his message across. And he said, you got a couple choices. You can run for a seat. You can sit on the board, which we were, IFCO or at Sherman or whatever, and that's tough. We're running busy offices and kids and the whole 9 yards, right? You could do that. That's one step. The other step is you can donate to a organization that's in line with what we want in chiropractic, and they're going to put great people in the seat. So I would say, number one, you either have to we have to stop complaining, and you either have to put your butt in the seat to make a difference. And if you can't, then you got to put your money and pay your rent back to some organizations that are in line with you, so that they're putting good people in the right seat. I think that's a big part of it. You and I both know the board. I didn't know that until I was on the board, but how influential the board is, because they're setting a guideline and a governance that the executive branch of the school has to meet. And if they can line up with what we're really want in chiropractic, that'll have an enormous influence as well. There's so many other people that do such, and Matt McCoy and so many guys that he surrounds himself with do such, phenomenal work. Whether, we're not going to agree with everybody in every position, but those are things that I think we owe it to ourselves, to perpetuate our future, but also to the people that gave us this beautiful, noble profession. I think, nobility is in the pursuit not to be better than your fellow man, but to be a better version of your former self. And I think if we do that as chiropractors, I think the other frustration I have, and I say this out of love, and I'm not going to drop names, it really bothers me that there's coaching programs out there that they teach this 90-day care plan. I just think I don't even talk acute care, restorative care, corrective care. And we minimize wellness care. Like, we make wellness care like a Flintstone vitamin and a baby aspirin. You know what I mean? Like, wellness care is the most important part of the care. It's not the least important part of the care. So if you want people to stick around, my attitude is, we got to get through some care here to get you well. But once I get you well, what's my job? Keep you well. Danny, that's the most important part. Because if we're not taking care of you, what's going to happen? Yeah, what you had is going to come back, but not maybe something even something worse. So the most important part of the care, the most important role I could ever play in your life and your healthcare, Dan, is to take care of you. I don't treat people, I take care of you. There's no health in crooked. Spines don't work better crooked. You're not healthier if you're crooked. More crooked, more sick. More crooked, more pain. More crooked, more disability. More crooked, more health problems. So, what's our conversation? We're working towards getting people well and healthy and driving them more towards lifetime lifestyle care. And the simplest truth, getting adjusted is good for you. I mean, it doesn't have to cure blindness, even though it might sometimes. It doesn't have to cure your backache. Eating good is good for you. Exercise is good for you. You ask the average person that just will die on the topic of a multivitamin and how good it is for them. They couldn't tell you the molecular structure of the vitamins or the chemical pathways, but they're going to go, yeah, brushing your teeth is good for you. People don't know the name of the bacteria that rots their teeth. No one could cite a reference of how frequent. Even my dentist, I ask him, hey, you brush your teeth twice a day. Can you cite that? I haven't had one fucking dentist tell me, oh, based upon 1922, there was not one person ever came up with it. But everyone's like brushing twice a day. So we don't need to meet that huge threshold. We just have to be getting adjusted is good for you. Going to a chiropractor, even if you don't have a symptom, is great for you. Going, if you have a symptom, is great. Like Dee Dee said, get the masses well, and then our job is to keep them well. So I think if we can hang our hat with lifetime care, wellness care, big vision, get away from this therapeutic short-term model, teach our fellow students in our schools that we're so much bigger than our excuses and bigger than our fears. And we can capitalize and take not the first place of healthcare, but take our proper role in healthcare.
I want to make that simple, what you said. Not that it wasn't, I mean that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I wanted to develop on it to kind of wrap this up. Because we've seen what's gone on in the profession for the last few decades. And some of it's very painful. And then there's a lot of people that will be, keyboard cowboys and just say, hey, I posted about how bad this is.
Exactly.
And then you feel like I did something. Like, the national boards are awful. And then like, well, okay, I'm glad you said that online. And what about, doing something? because that doesn't really do anything, or whatever it is. I got my emotion out by posting that, but then I didn't really do anything. So you said really, time and talent. So if you can put energy into being part of your state board or school board, all of those things, then do it.
Yeah.
You've done that, Joe. I've done it, and it's a lot of energy and time, and it's worth it. And you grow a lot through doing it. And if you're not up for doing that, write a check. Now, some of you can write your checks that are smaller or bigger, right? And most likely, just anybody that's a practicing DC, in fact, even any student can do this. Put on auto pay to contribute monthly the price of one adjustment in your office. I think just about any chiropractor can do that, okay?
Yes.
And just set it and forget it and say, you know what? The Foundation for Vertebral Subluxation, I'm going to set, my adjustment cost is $50, $80, whatever the heck it is, and I'm going to donate to that. Or it's, Sherman College, or whatever it is that IFCO. I just, I know they're important. I don't want to do anything, but I think, they're important. I'm going to support them, and I'm going to forget about what their membership costs. I'm just going to do one adjustment a month. Pretty much any practicing chiropractor should be able to have enough stewardship to do that, and if a large majority of the principled, vitalistic, whatever term is your favorite term to use, did that, you'd be going things in a much different direction.
100%. Yeah.
And but if you want to just say on Facebook, or whatever your thing, that the people, they're the subluxation deniers, and they're awful. Well, great. I'm glad you said that. But
Right.
what are we going to do for the future of the profession, right?
Yeah.
So
anyone that's denied subluxation, my simple answer to this: so you believe a crooked spine is better than a straight spine? No. Well, so you don't think the brain tells your body what to do and communicates through the nerves? So you think if it's more crooked, it's better for you? No. Oh, so you aren't a subluxation denier then? Because how can you argue with that logic? You think more crooked is better? Crooked's better?
Right. Exactly. Well, is there any? We'll wrap up here. Is there any last message that you want to share with chiropractors?
Be bigger than your excuses. Be bigger than your fears. Contribute. Be part of the solution. Stop being a critic. Stop looking at everyone else in comparison culture. Focus on you. Make yourself on the noble journey. Learn from other people, but make yourself better each and every single day. And that pursuit will bring you unbelievable level of success. I'm living it. I'm living that level of success through doing all of the things that I teach in coaching. And I do it, I have people go, what the hell are you still coaching? I mean, the success and money you have. And I feel like it's my responsibility. I love being around chiropractors. If I'm going to be around a group of people, I'd rather create a group of chiropractors, get a couple hundred of us together that are all on the same path. I mean, why would I want to be anywhere else? Because we're all like-minded people who love what we do, and we can adjust each other and talk tick and talk about practice and the good and the bad and what we can do to make ourselves better. And so to me, I'll go out like Reggie, still teaching the tick as best as I know it, as best as I can, to help for the betterment of the profession. So completely.
And thank you for contributing to the love you have. Very few people put the energy in that you do. If people put 10% of what Dr. Joe Borio would in, the profession would move forward, So again, Dr. Joe Borio, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for helping so many doctors and so many lives, and appreciate you so much. And again, if you're watching this and you have not registered for Mile High, you must be living under a rock. Okay, riseittomilehigh.com, September 26th to 29th. And anytime you get the chance to be around Joe Borio, you're going to be blessed to learn something. You'll learn something. So, and check out Chiropassion Consulting. Thank you, Dr. Joe, and keep changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.
Danny, real quick, I know we got to go. You and your wife, you guys have done so much, not just with Mile High, but obviously, putting that out, like you said, 12 years, being on the boards, and you took care of my son when he was out in Colorado. I want to recognize you for that, your level of generosity, and was just wonderful. And, when I think about people and that are a great representation of our profession, because I think our profession will grow by us looking at people going, oh, I really like him, I really like her, I want to, I want their kind of life. And I look at your level of authenticity and generosity, and Rochelle, and you are truly beautiful, wonderful people. You are really a representation of some of the best of what chiropractic has to offer as a profession and a lifestyle. So, wonderful people to be around and model your life after. So thank you for all you do as well.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. Thank you for saying that so much, Dr. Joe. And I might have to show up on your doorstep in Italy, just so you know.
All right. I am 100% serious.
I know you are.
Okay.
I know you are.
Okay.
All right, everybody. We look forward to seeing you on higher ground, and thank you very much for all your contributions to chiropractic. And look, there's lives out there in your community that need you.
Absolutely.